A devoted mother stands over a crib. She raises a blade and systematically murders her own children to inflict the ultimate agony on her husband. Then, instead of being struck down for her crime, she is lifted into the heavens by the gods themselves. This character exists in a bizarre cultural contradiction. Modern audiences often celebrate her as a fierce feminist icon who exposes the crushing weight of patriarchal oppression, while the story itself marks her as one of history's most terrifying and irredeemable monsters. This is the theater of Dionysus, where the playwright Euripides debuted Medea in 431 B.C.E. The premiere was a catastrophe. The play came in dead last in the city's theatrical competition, largely because it forced the men in the audience to confront a reality they weren't prepared to handle. To understand Medea's legacy, we have to look past our modern labels of hero and villain. Euripides wasn't interested in simple morality. He was constructing a psychological trap designed to show exactly what happens when a society pushes a person to the absolute brink. Sorting Medea into a neat category hides the true purpose of the play. Euripides was delivering a visceral, high-stakes warning about the structural rot hidden beneath the surface of Athenian life. The tragedy begins in the city of Corinth. Jason, the legendary Greek hero, decides to discard his wife, Medea, and their 2 sons to marry a local princess. Because Medea is a foreigner with no legal standing, this betrayal renders her stateless and triggers an immediate order of exile. For the ancient Greek audience, the case against Medea was built on xenophobia. They saw her as a dangerous barbarian from the East, a sorceress who had already betrayed her elder father and murdered her brother. To them, she was an emotional time bomb. Euripides initially plays into these fears. He keeps Medea off stage, letting the audience only hear her screaming and wailing, leaning into the stereotype of the irrational, volatile outsider. But when she finally steps onto the stage, the playwright pivots. Medea speaks with a chilling, calculated rationality, systematically deconstructing the inescapable trap of being a woman in a world where men hold every legal and social card. She describes a reality where women are essentially purchased into a life of domestic confinement. For a foreigner like Medea, the situation is even more precarious. Without a husband's protection, she has no home, no country, and no path to survival. Jason mates this desperate reality with cold, professional ambition. He argues that his new marriage is a strategic career move that would eventually provide his children with royal status. He treats his betrayal as a sensible business decision that Medea is simply too emotional to understand. The tragedy is born from this collision. Corinthian society demands total submission and cold logic, leaving no space for the human cost of Jason's ambition. When a marginalized person is denied any legal way to fight back, the internal pressure begins to build toward an explosion. Recognizing that she cannot win through reason, Medea begins to weaponize the very stereotypes used against her. She plays the part of the submissive, apologetic wife, tricking Jason into believing she has finally accepted her inferior place in his new life. She sends the new bride a gift of a finely woven dress and a golden diadem, both laced with a corrosive poison. The result is a gruesome sequence of body horror. As the princess puts them on, the poison melts the flesh from her bones, killing both her and the king who tries to save her. With her enemies dead, Medea reaches her internal breaking point. She enters an agonizing debate with herself, caught between the deep maternal love for her children and an all-consuming need to destroy Jason's entire existence. In her mind, the choices have narrowed to a terrifying binary. If she spares her sons, they will be left to the mercy of a city that will surely torture and execute them. If she kills them, she ensures they die by a loving hand, while simultaneously erasing Jason's future and legacy. Her fury finally consumes her maternal instinct. She retreats into the house and murders her sons off-screen, a final, total rejection of the humanity her society had already begun to strip away from her. This horrific act is the result of a psyche that has been systematically denied every other form of power. Medea chooses total, annihilating destruction because it is the only way left to prove that she cannot be discarded without a cost Jason isn't prepared to pay. The finale is ancient literature's most shocking moment. Jason arrives, finding his ex-wife hovering above in a golden, dragon-drawn chariot, holding their dead children. This god from the machine signifies that despite her crimes, the divine forces aren't punishing her, they're facilitating her escape. This brings us back to the question, is she a feminist hero? Viewed through a 5th century lens, Euripides created something far more unsettling than a role model. He gave a voice to a nightmare that the men of Athens had spent centuries trying to ignore. Medea is spared because, in the Greek world, a broken oath was a direct assault on the gods. By discarding Medea, Jason violated a divine contract he swore in their names. The heavens view Medea's bloody vengeance as the brutal tool required to reset the cosmic scales Jason had tipped with his own arrogance. The play reveals a terrifying truth. When a society systematically strips an individual of their humanity, that person will eventually shed whatever is left to become a monster. And when that happens, the oppressors are left with nothing but the ashes of the world they thought they controlled.